This episode of The Young Turks is brought to you by Boingo, the world's leading Wi-Fi network. Sign up at boingo.com/TYT.
You remember after the underwear bomber was arrested and after the Times Square bomber was arrested, Republicans gave the Obama administration holy hell because they gave them Miranda warnings at some point. One was after an hour, the other one was after 3 hours, and the Republican was like, no, don't do it! Don't give them any rights! Now, that doesn't make any sense because we gave them the Miranda warnings, and then they gave us a ton of information anyway. And that's almost always what happens. Look, it's shown throughout history that they don't shut up anyway. They tell you what they did anyway, which I've always been amazed by. And that's exactly what happened in these two cases as well. So experience shows us that the Miranda warnings did not stop them from, telling the authorities what they needed to do and what the information that they had. And actually, the Bush administration, most of the time in the United States, gave Miranda warnings. Of course, there's a famous case of Jose Padilla, who was just treated as an enemy combatant, even though he was a U.S. citizen. That was absolutely outrageous. But when they arrested people inside the U.S. for possible terrorist plots, they gave them Miranda warnings. And, of course, at that time, the Republicans didn't complain because it was a Republican president. Now that it's a Democratic president, of course, they raise a stink over it. And the Obama administration, as is their way, for no reason, later buckled. And that was today. First of all, actually, they went up and they wanted to get legislation passed saying, hey, we don't have to give them Miranda warnings. But they had trouble with that because Democrats didn't agree. Some of the real conservatives that care about civil liberties didn't agree. And then the other conservatives were like, it's not good enough. You should have to take away all their rights, treat them as enemy combatants, and don't try them here and send them to Guantanamo right away. So the legislation didn't go far. So if I was Obama, first of all, I wouldn't have done that because I don't want to get intimidated and bullied by the Republicans, right? So there's no way I would have been like, oh my God, you criticized me for the Miranda warnings. All right, I'm going to take away these Miranda warnings based on, your criticism. But of course, that's what Obama does. So, but after you tried for the legislation and it didn't work, come on, man, wrap it up. You say, hey, I did the best I could. Some of my bitch Republicans voted it down. Or, we're going to vote it down and didn't let it come up for a vote. So instead, of course, the Obama administration finds a new way to fold. And they're like, okay, well, then we'll do it by executive order. So now a Democratic president is saying that they are going to use a very limited exception. In 1984, Supreme Court had an exception for, look, if you're in the middle of an emergency and you got a safety hazard, you don't have to stop in the middle of shooting and say, hey, I give you the Miranda warnings, etc., right? Now, I'm oversimplifying, but that's about it, right? Now they're saying, well, not an imminent safety problem, but it's an imminent political problem because Republicans will criticize me. So I will not give them Miranda warnings for an indeterminate period of time based on the decision of the president. It's a terrible decision. It might be an unconstitutional decision. If you want to take it up all the way to the Supreme Court and argue to take away Miranda warnings, I actually have less of a problem with that. If you just do an executive order saying, I don't feel like following a Supreme Court decision. And by the way, all the questioning you do before giving them Miranda warnings still would not be admissible in court. So all you're doing is screwing up your case later when you want to try that guy and you want to bring him to justice. It's a classic Obama fold because it's totally unnecessary. It's way after the fact of Republicans criticizing him. He already tried to do it in one way, and the Republicans didn't let him. So he gives a triple fold here for no reason. And by the way, this is, look, in some ways it's better than Bush because Bush sent a lot of people to Guantanamo Bay where they had no Miranda warnings and no rights. Although, of course, Obama has not closed Guantanamo Bay. But in some ways it's worse than Bush because Bush did not take away some of the Miranda warnings, in cases here in the U.S. It's, why did we elect a Democratic president if he's going to do this? I know it's better than Bush because, for example, in Libya, Bush would have either done nothing because there wasn't enough oil, or if he decided there was enough oil, he would have sent in a third invasion with ground troops. It would have been a disaster. I get all that. But you're talking about the lowest bar in history. I really think Bush was one of the worst presidents we've ever had. And if he's just a little better than him, and by the way, worse than him in some regards, I don't call that a giant win. Look, one, the guy just cannot negotiate. He just loves to give away the store. And then number two, he's just not that progressive. He just isn't. A progressive president who actually believed in this stuff wouldn't do this. I mean, you imagine Russ Feingold, and they're like, oh, okay, now we're going to take away Miranda warnings. Russ Feingold would have been like, yeah. He'd have rough talked his advisors and run them off. But that's not the guy we got. That's the harsh reality of it.
Boingo is the leading Wi-Fi network in the world, okay? They got 125,000 hotspots, and they're actually an aggregator. They put all that together, and so they're the largest network of Wi-Fi spots. It's convenient. You just pay $9.95 a month, and you get all of that.
With Boingo Wi-Fi for your iPod Touch or iPad, you can enjoy super fast downloadable speeds, have access to more locations for FaceTime, and play online video games and even HD videos.
Go to sign up at boingo.com/TYT. It's awesome.